For those of you joining, this is our wonderful Sooner, Safer, Happier meetup in celebration of the paperback release of the book. We have three of the wonderful authors with us, Mr. John Smart, Simon Rauer, and Zsolt Brand. Miles is not able to join us today, but he will be with us in one of the other panels in a couple weeks. I'm just going to let people come on and then we'll kind of do introductions and get this underway. How is everyone doing today?
Good, thank you, Leah.
Oh, excellent. So glad.
Miles is currently in Australia, so it's 4 a.m. for him.
Yeah, we won't make him get up for that, will we?
Yeah.
We're not that cruel.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like we've got a good number of attendees already signed in, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I want to say welcome to everyone and thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, we are IT Revolution. I'm Leah Brown. I'm the managing editor over here, and we are delighted to welcome the co-authors of Sooner, Safer, Happier, which has just been released in paperback today. You can see it behind me. This book was originally released in 2020 as a hardcover and ebook, and we're so happy that with success, we're able to release it as a paperback as well today. If you don't know, the book is about the anti-patterns and patterns of business agility. We all know that we need to move faster, we need to get there to market sooner, we need to produce great value, and we need to be safe. So this is really what this book's all about: better value, sooner, safer, and happier. These wonderful authors came upon these anti-patterns and patterns through experience and observation, working at some of the largest enterprises around. And they've continued that work in their subsequent employment, as well as consulting with some amazing brands around the world. And I'll let John and the others talk to you a little bit more about that. Today, how we're going to handle this webinar is pretty simple. John, Simon, and Zsolt are going to talk to you all a little bit about the basis of the book and everything they've learned, kind of what BBSSH is all about. And then we're going to open it up to a Q&A. I would like to ask that you please use the Q&A lovely tool down in the bottom bar to ask your questions. You should be able to upvote on any that you think are really good and you'd like us to answer. When it's time for the Q&A, I'll MC and tell the authors the questions they'll answer, and we'll move through as many as we can over the next hour. If you have any issues, any problems, please use the comments and we'll help you out. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and I'd love to hand it over to John and your lovely co-authors.
Great. Thank you, Leah. Thanks very much. I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to give you a brief kind of 10 to 15 minute walkthrough of Sooner, Safer, Happier, the key patterns and anti-patterns. I currently have a bit of a cold and a cough, so if I'm spluttering while I'm talking, that's the reason why. Sooner, Safer, Happier, as Leah said, lessons learned the hard way from the four of us, and also about 100 other organizations as well, research for the book and in our networks. And we're going to give a very brief overview of the top 8 anti-patterns and patterns. So the first one, first and foremost, focus on the outcomes rather than doing agile or doing lean or doing DevOps. That's all a means to an end rather than the end. And the mistake I made here, I was the head of the agile transformation, and effectively my one pager said, "Hi, my name's John, and I'm here to make you do agile whether you like it or not." As you can imagine, some people love that, and some people really didn't like that. So instead, pivot, focus on the outcomes. The outcomes I found to work are better value, sooner, safer, happier. What are those words? Better is quality. This is building quality in, not inspecting it in later. To quote Deming, inspecting quality in later is like saying, "I'll burn the toast and you scrape." Tell you what, just don't burn the toast in the first place. Value is unique. It's why you're in business. I find OKRs to be a good way to measure value. in particular the KRs, the key results, leading and lagging indicators. Sooner is the heart of agile and lean. It's lead time you commit to something, to getting it into the hands of the consumer, throughput, count of items of value, and flow efficiency, which is the amount of time that work is being worked on versus the end-to-end lead time. That last one, in my experience, is one of the most insightful measures around the health of the system of work, how much time work is waiting. Most large organizations, flow efficiency is around about anything from 6% to 10%, which means that work is waiting 94% to 90% of the time. Safer is continuous compliance. It's agile, not fragile. This is InfoSec, data privacy, fraud, compliance, etc. And happier is happier customers, colleagues, citizens, and climate. So those better, value, sooner, safer, happier, those are the outcomes that we have found to work in every industry sector. This is organized human endeavor, whether it's public, private, or charity. The size of the prize that we've seen after 3.5 years across 100,000 people, multiple business units, the organization was 327 years old. We saw a 20 times improvement in quality, 20 times reduction in failure demand. With teams, we saw improving lead time, specifically the 85th percentile lead time, by a factor of 3. So teams were 3 times quicker learning, 3 times quicker to get value into the hands of the consumer, 3 times less sunk cost fallacy. The best teams were 20 times sooner. Safer, we saw a positive compliance trend. We saw a reduced impact radius. So if something did go wrong, it was a whimper rather than a bang. And speaking to colleagues in those roles, they were now spending 80% of their time proactively preventing things from going wrong. Previously, they were spending 80% of their time firefighting. And happier, we saw the highest ever colleague engagement scores and a positive client net promoter score trend. So that's what floats my boat, is more humane ways of working. People are happier at work, given how much of our lives we spend at work. The anti-pattern is agile for the sake of agile, lean for the sake of lean, DevOps for the sake of DevOps. It's not the end goal. It's a means to an end. It's not the end. So we took down all the posters and all the banners that said agile, and we put up posters and floor standing banners that said better, value, sooner, safer, happier, because that's actually what we're after. Number 2 is achieve big through small. So this is the second pattern, anti-pattern pair, rather than big through big. Think big, start small, learn fast. So apply agility to agility. Be agile about agility. Smaller is faster, bigger is slower. Sometimes I hear people say, we don't have time, we need to go big. No, my view is we don't have time to go big. That's, as per the book, that's like everyone goes to the top of the ski run and everyone is, 10,000 people are all pushed down the ski run at the same time. There's not enough ski instructors, helicopters, hospital beds for 10,000 people to all learn to ski at the same time. And the S-curve adoption, humans embrace change with an S-curve. Keep the gradient to change low to start with, prove it in your context, and then step up the gradient. So maybe 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams, 5, 10, 15, 20, 20, 30, 40, 50. And that could be for whatever change you're currently working on. So there'll be multiple S-curves. Number 3 is invite over inflict. One size does not fit all. So this is inviting participation so that motivation is internal rather than motivation is external. So this is inviting the natural champions. And it says it on the screen there, diffusion of innovation. So that's the diffusion of innovation curve, Everett Rogers, 1962. 508 studies went into this. Your innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and your laggards. So the learning here is identify your innovators and your early adopters, get behind them, give them support. The words convince and resistance should not enter your vocabulary if you're going about change the right way. And listen to what the laggards have to say. However, it's not about convincing anyone of anything. And not one size fits all. If the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we want multiple practices depending on your context. Number 4 is leadership behavior will make it or break it. It really is this binary, and this is not pointing up them as leaders. This is everybody as a leader. This is leaders at all levels. So key behaviors here. Number one, role model. Number two, create and nurture an environment of psychological safety. It's okay to fail. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to question someone who's more senior. Number three, servant leadership. Number four, emergent mindset. So servant leadership is supporting lines over reporting lines. Turn the org chart upside down. Yeah, dear team member, how can I help you? An emergent mindset is acknowledging that the future is not knowable, it's not predictable. So rather than success being a milestone in the Gantt chart, success is what have we learned and what value have we realized? Number five is build the right thing. This is soon is time to value and learning. This is the pivot from role-based silos to long-lived multidisciplinary teams with a product mindset, with long-lived products, forming, storming, norming, performing, and stay together. So the word value stream is a word I like to use, also known as tribes or crews or squads, different language being used, and OKRs. So outcomes over output, organizations increasingly adopting, embracing objectives and key results, which done well can be a really good way to fixate on the outcome rather than the output. This is an example of a feature factory. We hit our target of 60 arrows per minute. It's not about velocity. It's not about output. Building the wrong thing faster makes us wronger. Instead, what we want to do is we want to achieve an outcome, ideally with as few arrows as possible or as few story points as possible. We want valuativity, the most value in the shortest time with the least effort. We don't want a feature factory. So just watch out for the word velocity would be my advice. That's why it's better value sooner, not better value faster. We're deliberately using the word sooner rather than faster for this exact reason. Building the wrong thing faster makes you wronger. And then compliance, build the thing right. So this is minimal viable compliance. And this is going from one size fits all risk and control environment to safety teams, long-lived multidisciplinary specialist safety teams with InfoSec, data privacy, fraud, any other types of governance type roles, support type functions you have, and minimal viable compliance. So usually in organizations, one size fits all, 22 control points, 22 artifacts, no matter if you're doing something unrisky or something risky. So this is not about automating all of the controls in a DevSecOps pipeline where everybody still needs to comply to one size fits all. This is actually about not having one size fits all. So if what you're building is not risky, you don't need to do as many of the controls. If it is risky, you need to do more. So that's about right sizing risk. Simon.
Yeah, so chapter 7 is about continuous improvement. Chapter 7, the book Sooner, Safer, Happier is not about technology. Most of it is about business agility, but it's also not about technology. So we talk in chapter 7 about continuous attention to technical excellence. We in particular talk about how you need to slow down in order to go faster. If you're just going fast at a target, you're not going to learn. You are not going to be able to improve. You're not going to be able to parallelize doing your improvement at the same time that you're actually doing your work. You need to prioritize that continuous improvement. What we've found is typically 20% of time should be put on improvement tasks, whether that is paying off old technical debt or learning new things that will make you go faster. But ultimately, this is making you go slower to go faster. Sorry, John, go on.
Thank you. This is about, so chapter 8 is about creation of a learning organization. It's about how we pop the learning and information bubbles, information silos within organizations, how to create more connectedness, to share information, knowledge across, whether it's role-based silos, whether it's silos between teams or departments. How do we create a learning organization? It's also concerned with data and insights. One of the questions touched on that. So how do we actually create data and data consumption as a self-serve, so that individuals, teams, team of teams can use the data for continuous improvement, so continually improving better value, sooner, safer, happier outcomes.
Great, thank you. So that's a quick run through of the key chapters in the book. And now time for Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much to John, Jolt, and Simon for that overview. We've had a number of questions coming in as you guys were talking. So I'm going to just go through the ones that haven't already been answered by Jolt and Simon, and then we'll answer those ones live as well at the end if we like. So starting at the top here, around invite over inflict. What if it looks like no one wants to do something new? What would you do there?
Thank you, Rodolfo, for your question. So what if it looks like no one wants to do something new? One of my reflections, and I'm going to touch on Matt's question in answering this question. One of my biggest learnings since we published the hardback book is that you can boil this topic down to one word, which is incentive. And I'm doing more thinking about this right now. Actually, my thoughts are emerging on this, and this probably sounds like common sense, but my biggest reflection is that this whole topic about improving ways of working, improving how we do what we do, it all comes down to maximize incentive and minimize threat. And this is evolution and survival. And so, what if nobody wants to do anything? Well, then fine, don't do anything. It's not about convincing. There shouldn't be resistance. There should be an incentive, and so there needs to be intention around the incentive. So, for example, across a large organization, ideally, the most senior leadership team, the executive committee or the board, needs to have improving how we do what we do as a priority for the organization. So then there is an incentive. I'm now incentivized because I'm going to get paid, promoted, appraised, based on the fact that I am now improving ways of working. And it has to be across the whole company, because otherwise you go and speak to finance or audit or another part of the company, and the door doesn't open when you knock on the door because, well, I'm not incentivized to have this conversation with you. I've got my top 3 priorities, or 5 or 500 priorities. I don't need to have this conversation. I'm fine, thank you very much. Pulling the cart with the square wheels. I don't need to have a conversation about the round wheels. Incentive, and if incentive needs to be intentional, and if there isn't an incentive, it ain't going to happen.
Excellent, John. Related to that, our next top question from Justin is also around inviting over inflicting. And Justin would like to know, how do you predict the adoption of new methods to justify the business case for doing it in the first place?
Simon or Jolt, do you want to get it? If not, I can.
Yeah, please.
So how do you predict adoption of new methods to justify the business case you're doing in the first place? Sessions like this, meetups, show and tells, community, there's loads of ways of working, agile, DevOps type meetup, meetups on meetup.com, going to the DevOps Enterprise Summit conference, which is next week in Las Vegas. Are there any tickets left, Leah?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, there are some tickets left.
Yes.
So buy a ticket to the DevOps Enterprise Summit and take your colleagues, and then you'll hear the actual case studies up on the stage of people who are doing this, real practitioners who are doing this on the stage, and you'll hear not only the benefits, but you'll also hear the warts and all. You'll hear the challenges and the problems as well. So I think, to answer your question, it is about looking at case studies, communities, blog posts, inviting in speakers to your company, inviting other people in who've done it. Key thing is every organization is unique, and you can copy, but you can't paste.
I think it's also evident that internal conference is not just external. So because great things are happening within your organization, you just need to surface. One of the great way of surfacing is actually running an internal conference with an award of how much have you improved better value, sooner, safer, happier outcomes in the last 12 months. And then you're going to have lots of nominations so you can share on stage.
As well as, I guess, finally, what we talk about, think big, start small, learn fast. So do a slice of work, instead of trying to prove a business case for transforming your entire organization, then learn through doing. Get people who are keen to do something in a slightly different, slightly more improved way, and do it. Do it in a decent enough slice that it proves to a broad enough set of stakeholders, but do it small and do it quick.
Excellent. Thank you all. Let's see, our next top question is from Anonymous. Any tips for applying this, and I think they mean all of BBSSH, in a large multinational organization with significant legacy?
Yes, read the book.
Yeah, read the book. Yeah.
Any specific tips you want to pull out of the book to discuss right now?
Dear Anonymous, this applies to every single organization. This is exactly, the book is written for this, exactly this audience of large multinational organizations with significant legacy. So
it's where we learned our lessons.
It's where we learn our lessons. Yeah. So it's all the patterns in the book. It's everything we've just run through. Joel, did you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add that we have a Sooner, Safer, Happier YouTube channel where you see quite a few large organizations apply these patterns. For example, Nationwide Building Society, just recently we had a video. So just if you watch those, you will see that how it is applied.
And what I would say on the significant legacy is, in my experience, the trick here is nobody is out of scope of it continuously improving. So I really don't buy the Gartner, systems of record, system of innovation nonsense. Just because you're a mainframe, core banking or whatever, or S4 HANA, SAP, whatever, or some big third-party ERP system, you are not exempt from improving your outcomes. Everybody can improve quality, value, time to value, safety, and happiness. So we did this with a big old mainframe. The code was 50 years old. The developers were 70 years old. I'm slightly tongue-in-cheek when I say that. But I think some of them had been working on it for all of their lives. We still managed to reduce lead time on mainframe by a factor of 4, at least, if not better. So from 12 months to once a quarter, which was a big improvement. And you can carry that process on. So even if it's legacy, you're not exempt from improving on those outcomes.
Great. Right. Next question from Damian Harris. Do you have any guidance on how to find the right balance between horizontal domain specialization, e.g. security, versus vertical product or service specialization, e.g. mobile banking service?
Yeah, I guess start where you are. Your organization will have a context. We talk about shared service value streams for some of those sort of horizontal skills versus more sort of product or service or value focused straight value streams, where team topologies might have some slightly different terminology, like stream-aligned teams versus enablement teams. But ultimately, start with where you are and look at what your outcomes are. It may be that you need to rebalance. It may be that you find you don't have enough security people. So chapter 6 on safety teams in particular talks about some of the skills around security and how they might work with different value streams and different types of teams. But again, finding that balance really is to do with the context of your organization, what its regulatory requirements are, for example, what its customer reputational requirements are. And then trying to work from where you are based on outcomes to try and find that balance.
Excellent. Okay. Another one from Damien here. Is it an anti-pattern to try to do transformation at scale?
I would say depends how you do it. So if it's a big bang capital T transformation, then yes, I would say that's an anti-pattern. And that's, as I mentioned before, that's the achieve big through big. So I would definitely say that's a capital T transformation, big bang. You end up with the kind of the Kubler-Ross curve. You have the peak of excitement or denial. You have the trough of disillusionment, and the bigger the T, the bigger the transformation, the longer that dip in that trough of disillusionment, and the deeper it is and the longer it is. So where organizations have done a big bang, like you leave on Friday, you're a project manager, and you start on Monday, you're a product owner or a product manager. What you see is it takes 24 months, 18 months, 24 months before the organization climbs out of the hole. It's chaos. And usually the CIO, the COO, or the CEO has lost their job before time T2, before you climb out of the hole. And then usually there's new leadership that come in and they're like, oh, no, that didn't work. That's not for us. And then you set yourself back 3 years. So lowercase t, absolutely. Think big, start small. Amplify the experiments that work, dampen the ones that don't. It's an S-curve profile. Play to the S-curve. Don't try to do too much too soon.
And of course, there's a big irony in trying to do big T transformations because it's a big bang. You're not taking an agile approach to agile. You're not taking an iterative, an incremental approach to taking on iterative and incremental techniques. You have a plan and you have a project manager who has got a Gantt chart that says when everybody is now agile.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, from James. I've recently experienced conflict with how to shift an organization to OKRs over people performance. John Doerr talks about CFR. What's BVSSH's take on how to measure people for review?
Hi, James. I hope you're well. I can't see you on the chat, but so great question. I'll show you my thoughts on this first of all, and I'll try and give you the brief answer because this is obviously quite complicated. My personal view on this is roughly, and don't, this is not quite as exact as it might sound. Roughly 75% or 80% of the performance is team-based performance. So this is succeeding or learning as a team together. And this, for example, this is OKRs are good at this in terms of, as you put in your question, a shared goal for teams. So roughly 80% of performance appraisal should be how we do as a team. That incentivizes, back to this word incentive, it all comes back to incentive. That incentivizes people to get behind the slower members of the team. Someone might be learning, someone might be new, someone might have some problems outside of work. In my experience, the best performing teams I've seen haven't had a manager. I find that quite amazing, because of evolution. We are so good at being self-managing as a team. And if someone is just taking the mickey, if somebody is not pulling their weight and is disengaged, the teams are very good at self-solving for that. Either there's a problem, we'll get behind them, or people might get spat out of the team because of bad behavior. So, and then the remaining 25 or 20%, James, I would suggest is the behaviors of the individual. Are you collaborative, collegiate? Are you living the values of the organization? Are you nurturing an environment of psychological safety? Are you being a servant leader? Are you sharing your learning? So it's not about, very importantly, the personal feedback isn't about what have you as an individual delivered, because that drives the role silo-based behavior and competing against people. It's your behavior and then the team goal as to how well you've done as a team. Just on terms of how well you've done as a team, that doesn't just mean success, that also means intelligent failure as well. So not succeeding should get a pat on the back. so long as it's intelligent failure. Now, that's a big leap for some leaders to make. I hope that helps, James.
Thanks so much for that, John. Okay, let's see. From Jan, do you have a solution for business agility between teams instead of within a single team? I believe some called it scaled agile.
I guess I would start. It is always a team of teams. So it's not a single team usually. If you look at a outcome and then outcome and impact on customers, it is usually a team of teams. So the question is, how do you increase collaboration and transparency and connectedness between the teams, early and frequent enough engagements so that they can improve on customer outcomes as well as improve on ways of working outcomes, so BVSSH outcomes.
And I think,
yeah, go on,
sorry,
Simon. After you.
Alignment through OKRs. I think what we look is effectively aligned OKRs, not cascaded OKRs, not you must do this thing because somebody at the top said so, but the OKRs for your team should have an alignment, should be reaching the same valuable goal as the value stream that you're nested in. So align through goals and then try and descale the work so that individual teams can contribute value themselves. This can be hard based on legacy architectures. So we advise effectively migrating slowly but surely towards a more independent architecture at the same time that you are executing other elements of your small T journey towards better ways of working. But ultimately, it's those two things: descale the work and align objectives.
Yeah, and just +1 on what Simon said, and actually, what we're aiming for is we're aiming for high cohesion and low coupling. So, in terms of business agility between teams, my lesson learned is don't only manage the dependencies between teams, break the dependencies so that you don't have so many dependencies. That then gives you agility.
Great, wonderful. All right, let's answer this question from Matt. You answered it a little bit, but maybe we want to dive into this a little bit more. What's been your most impactful learning since publishing the hardcover of Sooner, Safer, Happier back in 2020, either to validate, challenge, or tweak these agility patterns?
Simon, Jolt?
Yeah, so for me, one thing was really enforcing on my journey to establish a self-serve data environment ecosystem so that it is really, really hard to shift the data mindset, experimental data-led experimental mindset. So having access to an automated data layer with self-serve consumption on data correlations and insights really make a big difference if it's based on invitation and not inflection. So I've seen, and with the organization I'm working currently, that actually with this approach, we have now started with the early adopters and innovators, and now we have more than 1,300 people, actually teams and individuals, teams and leaders at all levels using this data and correlation for continuous improvements. So that's a big learning and reinforcement of what we have in the book, that this is actually working based on invitation, and you can shift the data mindset in large organizations, and that's a really positive step change.
Simon, do you have one?
I'll just replay what you were saying before, John. I mean, more and more incentives matter. People can be asked to improve. They can, frankly, even be given sort of big dashboards that show that they're not necessarily improving. But if they're just incentivized to deliver features at the end of the next quarter, then that's the thing they're going to carry on doing. You have to change the incentives to change the behavior.
Yeah, 100%. And I just to build on that, on Simon's point there, it's this word, likewise for me, it's the word incentive in terms of biggest learning since the hardback came out, and in particular around org design. So I'm spending a bit of time looking at patterns and anti-patterns when organizations go from traditional role-based silos to squads, tribes, chapters, and guilds, or, you know, squads, crews, domains. Every company, seems nearly every company has its own language for this in terms of multidisciplinary teams, and there are some very clear anti-patterns and patterns for doing this. So just to mention around the org design side of things is and relating that to incentive, it can't be done in the absence of intentionally thinking about the incentives. So sometimes accidentally the incentives are improved, but without actually thinking about the incentives. We've got a multidisciplinary team. We're highly aligned to one goal. I am being paid and promoted and compensated and appraised on how well we do as a team. That's an incentive to do well as a team. However, what we've seen with the anti-patterns is where organizations have moved to multidisciplinary teams and value streams and OKRs, but the objectives, the appraisal, the incentive is still into the role silo, then we don't see success, because I'm still incentivized to compete against my peers rather than as a team. So I just wanted to, that's something I'm looking at the moment, and I'm going to be speaking about this next week at the conference.
Excellent. Very interesting. Thank you all. Let's see, what's the next top voted question over here from Jan? How would you avoid senior management overloading the portfolio by saying yes to everything? And although attributing priority to every initiative, still starting everything simultaneously, creating the organizational equivalent of a traffic jam?
What I would say is visualize. Go on, Jolt.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So visualization is a key pattern here. And you have the nested outcomes. So it's interesting that at team level, you always see that various Kanban boards and different boards are, so teams are getting better at doing that. But at the portfolio level, having portfolio Kanban or visualization, like a whole visualization wall, obey a wall, where it is visible how many things are happening at the same time, so that senior leadership can actually see that and make a decision to limiting work in progress at the different layers. So if what Simon said, if there is alignment and connectedness from strategy to execution, then actually a visualization can also happen. And then portfolio level Kanban, so portfolio level visualization can help in prioritization and limiting work in progress at every level.
And also on top of that, try and get senior management to commit to things that are on the far left of the Kanban board, having a good rationale why. We have an outcome canvas in the book that I genuinely believe is best in class. I'm in the middle of applying it to where I am now, and it combines some of the learnings that, for example, Spotify have done, not in the Spotify model, but in the data-driven model of data insight belief, with some qualitative insights, and then with a combination of both leading and lagging indicators. So start with why, the Simon Sinek thing, and then be able to have evidence for your hypothesis. If you can say that you need to come with these very basics, it's just one slide, but you need to come with these basics filled in before we'll think about sticking your idea in the portfolio. It's a really good sort of triage for ideas that have any backup, any data-driven backup, and have any way of proving that they'll work.
Page 200.
And one thing to add as well is, in terms of those people who are overloading the portfolio by making, and if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. In terms of those people, what I would do is try to have a conversation with them and say, how's it going? No, really, how's it going? And so basically, what's the selfish gene? So the first answer will be, yeah, good, thanks. The second answer will be, well, it's really slow. It takes ages to get anything done. I feel like I need to make everything the top priority, because if I don't make everything the top priority, nothing will get done. Not realizing that actually making everything a top priority is itself causing the situation that there's a traffic jam, that there are too many cars on the freeway or the motorway, and nothing's going to get done. So figure out the selfish gene, figure out what problem those people have, if those people have a problem at all. If the problem is it takes too long, oh, right, okay, I can help you with that. The problem is we're doing too much work concurrently. We need to limit work in progress, and we need to make it a pull-based system, not a push-based system. And then focus on the outcomes sooner.
Excellent. And I want to say that the outcome canvas Simon and John and Jolt have mentioned here is a great tool. And I believe soonersaferhappier.com has a great blog and a few other resources on that. You can download the canvas. If you're going to be at DevOps Enterprise Summit next week, John's going to be teaching a wonderful learning sprint on it. So lots of resources around that. And maybe we'll send that all out to you guys in an email after this as well. Okay, next question from Bernard. It's already some years ago since you've written your great book. I really love it. Are there any topics that you see in a different way today?
Nothing over and above what we've already said to Matt's question. Quite the opposite. It in terms of working with a number of large multinational organizations globally, if anything, apart from what we've already said, we've reflected on since, it reinforces the fact that these are common anti-patterns and patterns.
That's very good to hear that in 2 years since the release of the book, you still haven't seen anything that negates all the learnings, which really does show that these are as universal as you can get, at least right now. What are the top 3 BBSSH failure stories? Which anti-patterns got in the way?
I'll go for one, which is the temptation to inflict over invite. So that could be inflicting a reorg. It could be inflicting ways of working on teams. So, and this is since the book has come out, where I've seen intelligent failure. The one that I'll pick is around inflicting rather than inviting. So then people, they don't feel that they've got internal motivation. They don't feel so bought into the decision, especially around reorgs, squads, tribes, chapters, and guilds. It's like, I haven't done this. So much uncertainty and so much fear. I haven't done this before. Can I do this job? Do I even have a job? I was talking to somebody yesterday who is leading ways of working for a part of a company, and he mentioned that he'd spent the day on the phone with people saying, "Do I still have a job?" Job insecurity, which is terrible. So that's my one.
I think agility levels was a big pattern in terms of another inflecting of let's measure agility, agile IRU, instead of focusing on the outcomes. And I see that happening at organizations where they set levels and they start measuring as outputs instead of focusing on the outcomes.
Like a maturity model, Jolt.
Yes, maturity model.
I think for me, the anti-pattern in chapter 4 on psychological unsafety is one I've seen really breaking things. I think where leaders have the sort of theory X approach that everybody's lazy and you've got to effectively beat them into submission to deliver everything rather than believing in the intrinsic motivation, the theory Y. For me, that where I have seen it has been the worst anti-pattern to succeeding in pretty much any improvements.
Excellent. Thank you all. Let's go to this next anonymous question. I'm finding that we have lots of agile coaches in our space that subscribe to all of these things, which is great. But when I ask them to be transparent about where they are in the features that are assigned to them, or about the business value these features will deliver, they ignore me. Is business value not the reason we're doing this work?
That's an awesome question around the industry. And so what is really useful? What a useful pattern is around learning groups. So if contracting as a coach, so not only knowing the practices, but also contracting around that, maybe using an improvement kata, which is also explained in the book. But if that's the current state problems, and that's where we want to get to, and these are the outcomes we're going to define together, co-create with the teams, and go together with the coach, and going on a learning loop. And so that then it can be seen or measured whether are we making improvements or we are not making improvements.
Yeah, and I think again it's what we say. It all comes down to outcomes. If your agile coaches have been brought in to coach capital A Agile, or they've been brought in to coach Scrum, then there's probably it's not surprising that the things that they will tell you are, yeah, we've got lots of people turning up to our stand-ups, and backlog refinements going really well, and even we've got awesome retrospectives, because those are the things they've been brought in to coach. If they've been brought in to coach business agility or outcomes, then yeah, absolutely, you should be telling them or asking them why they're not able to help you with value on features. So agile coach is not necessarily the thing you want. It's a ways of working. And what we're talking about is a ways of working center of excellence. It's people who are able to take an omnist approach, to take lots of different frameworks, some of which might be systems thinking, some of which might be lean, some of which might be bits of Scrum, OKRs, and take all of these approaches and the best ones that fit your context in order to achieve the outcomes you want to achieve. The book at no point says, get a bunch of agile coaches in and you'll improve your ways of working. It gives a lot of patterns and techniques about that you might want to try applying in your context in order to achieve outcomes.
Yeah, and just to echo that a bit, Ashley is fixate on the outcomes. For example, better, sooner, safer, happier. So what we should be looking for here is reducing lead time, reducing time to value, balanced with quality, happiness, and safety. What we should also be looking at is the key results in the OKR in the middle. And it's interesting, in the 7 comments that are underneath your question, and thank you for the question, I see the acronym RTE and I see the acronym ART, A-R-T. Now, so SAFE, it has, in my opinion, is still a deterministic mindset. It is what are we going to build in the next 3 months? What are the features we're going to build? It still is a deterministic mindset. And that might be part of the problem if there is a case of assigning features to coaches. Rather than assigning features to coaches, the way I would measure ways of working coaching is, have we reduced our lead time? Have we improved our quality, and are people happier?
Excellent. Thank you, John and Simon, everyone. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions here. Yash asks, what are some better ways to approach descaling versus scaling?
I think we talked a little bit about that before, and please do look in the book. Effectively, it's, as John said, it's looking for high cohesion and low coupling, and that's between your teams. It's between the value that those teams are delivering, and it's if your teams are technical teams and own software, then it's trying to evolve that software. So it itself is loosely coupled. As I think I typed in one of the comments earlier, you might be constrained today by an application architecture that has been built up and wasn't optimized for flow. Typically, what our experience is in legacy organizations that are 20, 30, 50 years old. One of our organizations we have experience with has a system that I think actually is 60 years old next year and still working, delivering retail banking. In those organizations, those architectures have not been optimized, so you can deliver value once a quarter, week, month, 10 times a day, but you can evolve them. And there are great techniques out there, and we point at some of them in the book, about how if you are, as an organization, wanting to deliver better value sooner, safer, and happier, then you can evolve your technology, you can evolve your teams, and you can evolve your value, so you can do that.
And to add, ways to approach descaling versus scaling. True story. There are 100 people working in a traditional manner, trying to deliver a business plus technology product into the hands of retail customers. 18 months later, nothing's been delivered. So then what happens in this business unit is there's then another 100 people in parallel, also with exactly the same traditional ways of working, also working to try to deliver this same product, business plus technology product, into the hands of the customer. 200 people are now failing to deliver any value. Then what happened was we took 5 people out of the 200 people with better ways of working. We descaled the situation. It was 5, not 200. And within 3 months, within 3 months, they had something in the hands of external retail customers in production, generating value and generating learning. The problem was it wasn't a 100-person problem. And applying a Scrum at scale type framework on top of 100 people will not help. And this is the point in the book around descaling. Taking your existing dysfunction and applying an agile scaling framework will not help, unless in some very rare circumstances, which I can go into, but it's a fringe case. So that's the point around descaling. You're trying to remove the impediments to flow, remove the long lead times, start small, and then aggregate. A complex adaptive system, it's not like a watch. You can't take an organization apart and put it back together again. There is no one size fits all. You have to descale and then aggregate in context, a collection of descalings.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's do just one last question and then we'll say goodbye. I would love some more explicit guidance on how to set up instructor centers for enablement in companies, people involved, job descriptions used for conversations with managers and HR, etc. Do you have anything on this?
Yes. So recommendation, ways of working, center of enablement. And thank you, Urko, for your question. And thank you for using the term center of enablement rather than center of excellence. I can tell you've read the book. So yes, it's about enablement. Very briefly, guidance, depending on the size of your organization. If it's a large organization, a central ways of working COE, usually single digit number of people, and then a federated fractal pattern. So then if you've got, whether you call them business units, divisions, or value streams, then have one ways of working COE for each business unit. And my advice is the reporting line for the, again, probably single digit number of people supporting in that ways of working COE, the reporting line is into that business. It's into the business unit. So it's not viewed as being this alien thing from group center. Oh, group center know nothing about our business. So psychologically, local reporting lines. And then if for very large companies, you might go a third level down, and then you might have a double click. So financial services, for example, investment banking, double click, equity trading, debt trading, research. And you might have a third level down of ways of working COE. In my experience, that tends to be a hat that someone's wearing rather than a full-time role at the third level down. but at the second level and at the group level, it's a full-time job. The pattern here is to try to solve impediments to flow at the lowest possible level of the org. So if you can solve it, 3 levels down, solve it there. If you can't, bubble it up. If you need to bubble it up again, bubble it up again. So we're trying to solve impediments at the lowest possible level.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And of course, as always, there's a ton more resources in the book. You can also join the Sooner, Safer, Happier community. John and the co-authors have built an amazing community around these ideas. You can learn more and join this free community over at soonersaferhappier.com. They conduct lots of meetups where you can discuss more, and they bring in guest lecturers, etc. It's a wonderful resource to continue your learning and continue engaging in better value, sooner, safer, happier. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We so appreciate you coming and learning with us. I want to thank our wonderful authors here, John, Simon, and Zsolt, for joining us and being willing to dedicate your time. You can, of course, go and purchase the book, and we hope you do at most major retailers. Today, we're out in paperback. We're so happy for that. We will be conducting 4 more lovely meetups, and the next ones are going to be deeper dive workshops into 4 specific topics. Those are all over on the website, and we'll send another email after this if you want to join any of those. In the meantime, we hope everyone has a wonderful day. If you will be joining us next week in Las Vegas for the DevOps Enterprise Summit, come on by and chat with us over at the IT Revolution booth. Go see John on stage or in the Learning Sprint. And both John and Simon will be signing books on Wednesday evening, so come on over and join us. All right. Thank you again so very much. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thanks
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.